Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and proud Tampa Catholic graduate, the one and only Eric Henry of Horns247.com. This is a January 16th edition of the Flagship Podcast. And Eric, we have a lot to get into. The Texas Longhorns roster is changing. Of course, we knew all the seniors who would be departing, guys like Andrew Makuba, Jahdae Barron, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, Jermaine Lole, Big Bill Norton, Jake Majors, Hayden Connor on the offensive line. But we had to find out who those underclassmen who were thinking the time was right to jump into the NFL draft. And now we know Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, Cam Williams, big Cam false start Williams.
Come on, Chip.
Come on, man. Why you hating on Cam Williams? He set the school record for false starts, for crying out loud. Kelvin Banks, Jaden Blue, and of course, Quinn Big Daddy Ewers. And reported in the Insider this morning at Horns247.com that Quinn Ewers had an $8 million NIL offer. Of course, it's probably still on the table if Quinn Ewers wants to change his mind. But as of right now, Quinn Ewers going into the NFL draft. According to the sources I talked to, sources close to Ewers, he thought it was time to go to the NFL, and he didn't want to alter his college experience. He didn't want to, leave Texas, go play for someone else, and kind of damage the relationship that he built with Texas. Preserve his legacy, if you will, but really more than anything, just preserve his college football experience at Texas. I find it fascinating. It's a lot of money to turn down. Eric, your thoughts?
First off, good morning. Appreciate everyone, the now 100 plus of you who are rocking with us this early in the morning. Chris Bennett asked, and appreciate you watching as always. Is Eric sleepy? Whoever decided to schedule a 9:10 tip-off, Chris Bennett, I have a strongly worded email for them, typed up, ready to go as soon as we finish taping.
Thank you,
this
SEC.
podcast. To Chip's question, talking about Quinn Ewers. I am not surprised, Chip. I tweeted this out. This has long been my feeling. You've done an excellent job reporting this thing all the way through, but it's just been my feeling, just as a gut feeling, talking with Quinn Ewers. He didn't want to line up and play football for another program. He didn't want to put on another uniform. And to those who took the liberties, and when I tweeted out that Quinn, my gut feelings, he didn't want to wear another uniform, decided to quote tweet with Ohio State. Okay, I guess it was fairly obvious I meant another uniform past this experience. I didn't mean previously. And so I thought that was, was implied. But nevertheless, Chip, let's just walk through this thing for a second, right? Because I think this matters to Quinn Ewers. You talked about, and it's in the Insider, reported $8 million in terms of a NIL package that he decided to turn down in favor of an NFL career. One, Chip, you and I have talked about this off the air, so I guess we'll just bring this conversation on the air. We don't see Quinn Ewers, or at least I'll speak for me. I won't speak for you. I don't see Quinn Ewers falling beyond the third round. I think Quinn Ewers, in my mind, is a lock for that second round. Chip, I told this story on my Ask Me Anything. I was a junior at UCF, 2013. I watched this guy by the name of Blake Bortles take every single snap, Chip. And I saw the NFL saw a guy who was 6'5", 235 with a rocket arm and said, he's a top 5 pick. And Blake Bortles went 5th to Jacksonville, right? And Blake Bortles' shortcomings were painfully obvious, Chip, to anyone who watched his collegiate career. But I only say all that to say the NFL will emphasize and overemphasize quarterback play. There's no reason for me to believe that a guy with Quinn Ewers' measurables, with his physical traits, is not going to test well. Steve Sarkisian is going to talk him up to NFL teams, and I don't see him going anywhere outside of, maybe early third round. I say all that to say the money that he would have received in NIL compensation, I don't think was worth him passing up what in essence would have essentially been that if he plays out a rookie deal. And the last part of it, Chip, before I pass it back to you, you would know this better than I. I know you're not a native Texan, but you've been here a while. Quinn Ewers is a Texan. I think it mattered to him, Chip, to preserve that legacy, a legacy that Texas fans are already. I saw Quinn referred to as polarizing, and I hate the fact that he is a polarizing figure. Can't deny that. I don't think he's done anything to be polarizing outside of just his play, right? And even his play at 25 wins, or he's been part of 25 wins. Obviously, he missed some starts. So I think Quinn has 22 wins, if memory serves me correctly, over the last 2 years as Texas is
21 and 5.
Yeah, there we go. 21 and 5. I don't think there's anything about that is polarizing in my mind. But being a smart guy, he knew if I put on another uniform, my ability to come back and be part of whatever legacy this group of Texas Longhorns establishes moving forward, Chip, that's done. That's out the window, right? And I think rightfully so, that was the smarter play as opposed to pursuing whatever else may have been out there.
Yeah, I mean, the last 3 quarterbacks to lead Texas to a conference championship, Quinn Ewers, Colt McCoy, Vince Young. So say what you want about Quinn Ewers. The guy was a warrior. He fought through injuries for Texas. He helped lead them to back-to-back college football playoff semifinals. Won that conference championship in 2023. Provided some incredible memories with wins. In great performances in wins at Alabama, at Michigan. And went 2-1 against OU and 1-0 against A&M. So he's obviously the marquee name, leaving early for the NFL draft. Not a surprise. We've been reporting that since November. The Arch Manning era is upon us, Eric. We'll get to Arch Manning here in a second, but Jaden Blue, any of the names that we've ticked off of the players leaving? Jaden Blue, I mean, everybody knew Calvin Banks was leaving. Cam Williams, Matt Golden, Isaiah Bond, any of those, surprise you or leave you shaking your head? Like what's he thinking?
No, I mean, Chip, when you look at all of them individually, we'll exclude KB because, like you said, Kelvin, God bless him for saying he hadn't made a decision. Kelvin, you're a parent. You got mouth to feed. And go do that, getting paid a whole lot of money. So we knew what that was. We'll exclude him. I'll start with Jaden Blue. Jaden Blue is a guy that you just took a look at the running back room projected for next year. And it was too big of a risk in my mind to come back and not get either a lion's share of the carries guaranteed and possibly be, the second or even third option in that rotation with CJ Baxter coming back from injury. Of course, we'll see how he looks coming back from injury. That was a serious injury. All accounts seeming that he's going to be okay coming back, but that is a serious injury. Of course, when Travion Wisner, Jarrett Gibson, the emergence of those guys, right? So there is that aspect. Not surprising at all. Jaden Blue, I think, has done enough in terms of his versatility that there's an NFL team that's going to say, hey, a guy who runs that fast, who's got good hands out of the backfield, if we can just bulk him up a little bit and get him to hang on to the football, we may have something there, right? So that didn't surprise me. Matt Golden, I think this kind of plays into my feelings on both he and Isaiah Bond. This is not the deepest receiver draft in my mind, right? You're probably talking about Luther Burden, maybe as that wide receiver one. And of course, listen, there may be other guys who spring up, but for Matt Golden, I think he had to strike while the iron was hot. Not surprised there. That plays into my feeling about Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond is going to get himself healthy. He's going to run a 4.3, right, Chip? Because everyone, if I may sidebar for a second, remember when 4.4 was a fast time? Remember when 4-4 was blazing? Now everyone runs for 4-4. It's like, all right, cool. Everybody does that, right? He's going to wake up. He's going to get himself healthy, wake up on pro day, run a 4-3, put himself in good position as far as the draft is concerned. So that one didn't surprise me too much. And lastly, Cam Williams. That's one on the board that I've seen debated the most. Again, you could make the case, Chip, that had Cam Williams returned, maybe has a chance to improve his stock and be a surefire, maybe top 10 pick. What I would say to that is 6'5", 335 with his measurables and his intangibles doesn't grow on trees, okay? In the NFL, you want to know the things they're putting a premium on? Quarterback, offensive line play, defensive line play. Cam Williams, not surprised that he decided to make the jump as well. So none of those, Chip, genuinely surprised me. Maybe there could have been a conversation about, hey, do I return if you're Bond or Cam or Jaden Blue? But those were 50-50 at best, not, any heavily, weighed in a further direction as far as coming back to the collegiate game.
Yeah, and Cam Williams, I was told, did not care for, school. I mean, look,
I ain't here to play school, Chip.
Hey, he came to get some education and to build his prospects of a career, and he's done that. So I don't begrudge Cam Williams. Look, I wasn't trying to take too big of a shot, but 16 penalties, Eric. Got to work on that. And that's according to Pro Football Focus, 16 penalties on Cam Williams in the 2024 season. It's interesting here. Andy Rodriguez says Jaden Blue reminds me of Jamal Charles. Yes and no. Jamal didn't fumble like that, but let's see if Jaden Blue can get it together. I still want a measurement of his hands because it got Ricky Williams in the draft process. They measured his hands. Sure enough, he's got 8-inch hands, not ideal. And Ricky had some fumble issues, but Jamal Charles was unbelievable. I mean, he cut in space like Gale Sayers. So, but speed-wise, yes. Yes, Andy, speed-wise, I do agree with you. And Eric, I think Ryan Niblett is the heir apparent to Jaden Blue. Everyone wants to know, well, who's going to be that speed guy? Who's going to be the new Kalen Robinson? Who's going to be the new Jaden Blue? Well, Ryan Niblett is a 10-300 guy who can burn and has been all in from a I'll do anything you need perspective. Really good on special teams this year. Keep an eye on Ryan Niblett. Any thoughts on that?
Chip, before I address that, do you want to address this? Because I think this is probably timely that you can touch on.
This is the weirdest thing going on. I mean, I was on the phone last night, deep into the night, because yesterday was the deadline to hurting from Trey Moore. Now, everything I'd heard was that he was trying to figure out if a new deal could be done for him to return to Texas. He was a high dollar guy in the transfer portal a year ago. Trey Moore thinks he is an elite pass rusher. He would like to pass rush all the time. So Texas was trying to figure out, okay, what's that worth? What, can we meet and find some middle ground? Or is Trey Moore going to end up with an NIL deal to play somewhere else? This is the one mystery guy. I mean, even UT sources that I was texting with, I'm like, any indication? And they're like, we're waiting and seeing. So Trey Moore was trying to field the best offer, as he should. He and his agent. So the drama continues with Trey Moore, Eric.
Chip, that's fascinating, and here's why it fascinates me. And I will come back and touch on the question you asked with Ryan Niblett. We don't think of college the same way we think of the NFL, right? In the sense of this is still supposed to be a developmental phase in someone's career, right? So when you hear Trey Moore say, I'm an elite pass rusher, or at least what your sources are telling you, that the thought process is, I'm an elite pass rusher and I want to pass rush, you wouldn't bat an eye at that the NFL, right? Like there are guys who were just elite pass rushers, who they were pass rush specialists, and they would get paid good money to do that. You think of the college game, and it's like, well, don't you want to round yourself out and learn how to stop the run, right? So that is super interesting because, to your point, Chip, I'm sure there are plenty of teams who would put a good dollar amount on a guy who just wants to come in and get them double-digit sacks and say, hey, we'll figure out the rest, right? So that is fascinating. To quickly touch on Ryan Niblett.
Well, and the other thing, the NFL looks at Trey Moore and says, you're an outside linebacker.
Sure.
You're not a hand on the ground defensive end in the NFL. Now, he can go prove him wrong. We've seen undersized guys become, Bruce Irvin.
But he's not even really undersized. So that's the thing that's weird about it, Chip. Not to cut you off. I think that's the thing that's kind of fascinating to me, right? I mean, he's legit. He's listed at 250. Let's call him 240. And we've been next to Trey. Trey's 240.
Yeah, they list him at
250, right?
245, 6'3", 245. In the NFL, hand on the ground guys in the NFL are typically
260.
260, 265, 270. Sure. Myles Garrett's 280.
Sure.
So, but Myles Garrett's a freak.
Sure.
So, yeah. So stay tuned. Stay tuned on the Big Ocho.
There you go. Yeah, no, just quickly finish that thought on Niblett. He's a guy who's, in my mind, it's a little bit, maybe it's just my feeling. I could be wrong. I think it's a little early to project him. I mean, certainly has the physical ability to fit that role. But I do wonder, what does it look like with him with a full camp at the running back spot, Chip? Or is that a situation where he's still kind of that tweener, right? Because I still think there could be a role for Ryan Niblett as a jack of all trades, as, a guy who gets some snaps in the backfield, a guy who gets some snaps at receiver. Chip, I know this may seem like, eons ago, but I remember when I first joined the site, there was a thought that this guy named Savion Red could be the Deebo Samuel, right? The jack of all trades. I could still see a role like that for Ryan Niblett, right? So I think that's why I'm a little taking more of the wait and see approach in terms of just him as an exclusive running back.
Well, Savion Red, leading rusher for the Nevada Wolfpack. There you go. Who had that on the bingo card? All right. So we've touched on the guys, and DJ Campbell staying. Good move, DJ. Good move. So if you're looking ahead to the Texas offensive line next year, Trevor Gooseby at left tackle, Neto Umazulu left guard, Cole Hudson at center, DJ Campbell at right guard, and probably Brandon Baker at right tackle for Arch Manning. So CJ Baxter comes back. You'll have Contravian Wisner, Ryan Niblett. You've got Christian Clark coming off the Achilles. And you've got, freshmen rolling in. So Amari Niblack at tight end, going to be the leader in the clubhouse with Jordan Washington and Spencer Shannon all trying to replace Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis. And then at receiver, Eric, DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo are your top returnees at receiver. Your thoughts?
I am fine with that. I wrote this earlier for the site earlier in the week when the decisions came down that Matt Golden and Isaiah Bond would enter the NFL draft. Chip, I'm good with that. Ryan Wingo, let's just take a minute and talk about this, right? The star freshmen, the guys who broke out in terms of the true freshman guys. You look at Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. You look at Ryan Williams. Did you know he was only 17, Chip? Did you hear that? Because I heard that's a rumor. He was only 17. I only heard that 6,000 times during the season. He was only 17. But Ryan Williams at Alabama, to a lesser extent, cheap Tampa Catholic plug here. TJ Moore at Clemson. But those guys all got way more targets than Ryan Wingo did. Jeremiah Smith had something like 98 targets. Ryan Williams had, I believe it was in the mid-80s. Had Ryan Wingo seen the amount of targets, and he had 55 targets this year, you're talking about a guy who, in terms of production, is going to be viewed the same way as those guys. And those guys are looked at as all-world, can't-miss prospects. I view Ryan Wingo in the same regard, Chip, because we saw him from day one just look, I don't want to say a man amongst boys, but looked like he belonged, right? He looked like a man amongst men. I think that's a better way to put it. He looked like he belonged, as I'm getting the Twitter notification that Chip Brown sources. I got to love Twitter. I just got the notification of your tweet with Quinn and the $8 million NIL offer that distracted me from my phone. Nevertheless, I'm comfortable with that as the number one.
That tweet's been out for hours.
And the notification just came across, Chip. That's come on, X. Come on,
X.
I'm fine with that because I think Ryan Wingo, and also Chip, if I need to make this point, I think it's clear. Remember the kind of chemistry he had with Arch Manning going back to the orange and white game. I think that's going to be huge moving forward. DeAndre Moore, we've seen what he can do in the slot. I think if he's with the program next year, and all signs appear that he's going to be with the program next year, he's primed for a breakout. What I do have a question, Chip, is Steve Sarkisian in his career, at least we'll just go over Texas, right, has been hesitant to kind of really lean into a inexperienced crop of receivers, right? What was the reason he gave in 2023 as far as why Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore and Ryan Niblett didn't see the field? He said he had veteran guys who he trusted, right? And as you saw him go out and get vets entering this season. I am curious if he makes a move, and I know we'll talk about that and take it or leave it. Does he go out to the portal and try and get a veteran? Or does he, kind of lean into some of these guys, some of these freshmen who are out there and really talented prospects who have a chance to really make me. That means a slew of them. There's that. And here's the other thing, Chip, that I will say, right? Steve Sarkisian, I'm going to write about this for the site, spoke about this during the year, kind of his philosophical shift away from the bigger 6'3", 6'4" guys, maybe some of the smaller guys that you saw at Alabama. And he's got some of those smaller guys on the roster, but you take a look at Wingo. Wingo's a bigger guy. You take a look at some of the other guys who they have, Parker Livingstone and others, some of the other true freshmen coming in. Those are bigger guys, right? Does a guy like a Jamie French or Khalid Lockett, fit that mold as a smaller guy, or does he need to go out and get a veteran who is, and when I say smaller, I'm talking about, 5'11", 6 foot. I'm not talking about a 5, no disrespect to Silas Bolden, not talking about, a 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", 160-pound guy, right? So does he do that? But that's my long-winded way of saying, Chip, if for speaking for me, if Texas walk into spring camp with what they have coming in right now and letting those guys develop a rapport with Arch Manning, I would be comfortable, but it's still very much a wait-and-see approach if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, Michael Terry. And the good news is these are all early enrollee freshmen, so they're going to go through the spring. Michael Terry, 6'3", 205. Khalid Lockett, 6'2", 180. Jamie French, 6'1", 185. So bigger receivers are in. Now those guys can burn. So size and speed, A.D. Mitchell certainly showed you what he can do. All right, Eric, on the defensive side, you lose Andrew Makuba, you lose Jody Barron, but you get Michael Taft to return. Michael Taft coming back for his red shirt, fifth year. Great leadership. Guy elevated his play like nobody's business. Now you've got his leadership in a safety room with guys like Jelani McDonald, Derek Williams, Jordan Johnson, Rubel, Xavier Filsamin, of course, the 5-star freshman, Jonah Williams, who will be in for the spring, the 6'3" do-it-all safety who, the comps are off the charts. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind was I kind of wonder where this puts Jonah Williams. Listen, I wasn't putting the fate of the Texas secondary next year squarely in the hands of an incoming true freshman, but we're talking about someone, as you laid out, who's extremely talented, who, in all likelihood, had a real shot if he comes in and handles his business during spring and shows himself to crack that rotation year one, right? Now with Michael Taft coming back, I still think you're talking about a virtual lock. Your three safeties, Michael Taft, Jelani McDonald, Derek Williams Jr., right? And then you talk about a guy like JJR, who showed some flashes, showed some promise. Jordan Johnson-Rubel, JJR, showed flashes as a true freshman. Is JJR a guy who can, maybe be a star? I don't know. I mean, he kind of has some of the measurables that could do that, but I don't necessarily know that you slide Jalen Gilbo outside, right? I think Gilbo fits at the star, so we'll see what happens there. So the first thing that came to mind when and this isn't taking anything away from Taft, I'm going to come to him in a second, but the first thing that came to mind when I heard the decision that he was returning is, where does that put Jonah Williams? Now, to Taft, this is a group, Chip, that I think they are going to need leaders, as all great teams and all great groups do. And, listen, those teams, the best teams, leaders emerge, right? It's a pipeline. It's the culture thing. You pass that thing down, it goes on. I think Anthony Hill is certainly someone who's ready to pass the baton. That was a name that when I was in the open locker room or the player breakout, excuse me, everyone was talking about, hey, he's the guy, the next guy up to handle the torch as far as defensive leaders, right? But it's great to have a guy who's as respected as Michael Taft, because you are losing Quinn Ewers. You're losing the big defensive tackles. You're losing Kelvin Banks. You're losing some of those Jake Majors, some of those veterans right on offense who were just, strong figureheads and forces in the locker room. So I think of Taft come back from that aspect. And the last thing, Chip, I'll say is this. I wonder, and I didn't get a chance to ask Michael this in this way. I asked him in a roundabout way, and I kind of wish I'd asked him in this sense. Is there a feeling that and this would have been, Peach Bowl, so I'm speaking past tense, had you decided to make the decision to return to school, that it's in a similar vein as Jahdae Barron, where it's like, hey, I'm going to bet on myself, right? I'm a likely pick in the NFL draft now, but I want to come back, bet on myself, as Michael Taft has done his entire career, right? Choosing to turn down scholarship offers to play for his hometown Longhorns. And maybe he can get a little higher grade next year. I don't know. I genuinely, Chip, and I would love your thoughts, I genuinely don't know. My gut told me that Taft's grade was going to be as high as it was now, as it would be next year. But, and I didn't feel that way about Jahdae Barron. I felt that Jahdae had a chance. I thought he was severely undervalued last year, and I thought he had a real chance to boost his stock. I don't know, Chip, because Taft isn't, a guy who's 6'5", 230, some freak of nature size back there athlete. He is who he is, right? So I don't know, Chip. But for Texas, as far as in the short term, it's great to get number 16 back in Austin.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the magic of that secondary was the communication he had with Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba. And I'm sure that's hard. I'm sure part of him wanted to walk out with those guys because he's probably not going to have a better situation than that. If you're a Texas fan, you're hoping that Michael Taft and his ability to communicate will elevate guys like Derek Williams, Jelani McDonald. And Jelani McDonald, we've seen he can play a lot of different things. He can play star, he can play safety, he can play a little bit maybe corner, but let's see. That would be insane if Jelani McDonald could actually line up at an outside corner position and give you the kind of play that he's given you, because that guy is a special football player. Wherever they put number 25, he's going to produce. And that's exciting, because we've seen glimpses, and we got to see a lot more glimpses of Jelani McDonald this season. But that guy's a playmaker. So's Derek Williams. My God. Derek Williams was on fire when he got hurt against Oklahoma. He had forced a fumble in the Oklahoma game before he got hurt, had an interception in the Michigan game. Playmaker. So that room looks good. Obviously, with Jahdae Barron moving on at corner, you're looking at Malik Muhammad, you're looking at Kobe Black, you're looking at Wardell Mack. And and let's see what some of these, youngins look like. You've got Cade Phillips, who's this 6'1", 178-pound corner coming in. He'll be an early enrollee freshman with an 80 wingspan. That's insane. Ethan Burke's wingspan is 83 inches. He's 6'6". So this Cade Phillips has the longest arms imaginable. And as a corner, that's what you want. I can't wait to see Cade Phillips. This is like I'm all eyes on Cade Phillips. I want to see this dude play with that length and what that brings. So, and then obviously on the defensive line, Eric, we know Texas has brought in already 2 defensive tackle transfers: Cole Brevard from Purdue, Travis Shaw from North Carolina. Travis Shaw, 6'5", 330. So built similarly to Alfred Collins. I had one team source say this guy is huge, which is what you want in the SEC. And then you've got Cole Brevard, 6'3", 333 pounds at that defensive tackle spot. Obviously, they've recruited amazingly. Justice Terry, Myron Charles, Josiah Sharma, 6'4", 348. Let's see how he moves at 348. But if he can move at 348, he'll get on the field. Because they don't grow him like that. That's your Sadir Mitchell replacement, Eric. Sadir Mitchell, Texas wanted him to stay, but Sadir was all over the place. He ends up going to LSU with Bo Davis. Look, if Josiah Sharma can come in with that dog, then that will have been a good trade out, it appears. Linebacker, I really like this signing of Brad Spence from Arkansas, Eric. This guy's a do-it-all player. He's got 2 years of eligibility. Anthony Hill about Brad Spence briefly at the Peach Bowl. And he said, yeah, he fits right in. He's been in our meetings, chill guy, but you can tell he knows what he's talking about. Had 7 tackles against Texas in their game earlier in the fall. So Brad Spence, I think, underrated pickup at this point. And then, of course, the transfer punter, Jack Bomeister. So, Eric, any thoughts on the other aspects of the defense?
Yeah, quickly on Spence, I think he has a guy who has a chance to come in and make an impact just because of his versatility, the things he does. I had some people on the boards, at least on my Ask Me Anything, say, oh, this feels like a Kendrick Blackshire. Well, no, Brad Spence has done more in college football than Kendrick Blackshire had done entering, his very short stint with the Longhorns in spring camp, right? So that is definitely not an apples to apples analogy. Also, Brad Spence, I mean, listen, I don't want to slam Kendrick, but Brad Spence, I think, is going to come in a little bit better shape. Kendrick Blackshire got up to 260, 270 at one point, right? That's not going to be the case with Brad Spence. And yeah, Chip, we talked about other aspects of the defense. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't take a minute or so, not to go too long. Where does this kicking situation feel like it lands itself entering 2025, right? Because we didn't see a field goal, but Will Stone took the extra points, right? That meant you'd have to assume Will Stone would have kicked a field goal if called upon in the Cotton Bowl. Bert Auburn said he's coming back for 2025. I don't know if he was necessarily signing up to come back for a kicking competition, right? That to me, I think, Chip, feels like a spring storyline because I don't think, and listen, I could have it wrong. I know Bert is a Texan guy. Flower Mound, if memory serves me correct, from up in the DFW area. Of course, he'd want to stay in his home state, but I don't think you can come back for a 5th year and be like, yeah, we're kind of 50-50 entering fall camp. I think you got to go kick somewhere, right? So, Chip, that feels like something to keep an eye on just as a spring storyline.
Yeah. Bert's going to be in a full-blown competition for sure for that field goal kicking job, which is amazing. Guy was the points leader for Texas last year, and was an awards candidate coming into the 2024 season, and then it all went to HE double hockey sticks in the SEC championship game, and then again in the Peach Bowl. So yes, that is definitely a storyline to keep an eye on. Okay, back to Arch Manning, Eric. Arch Manning has spent 2 years in the Steve Sarkisian system. He dazzled in his 2.5 games playing in relief of the injured Quinn Ewers. He had a touchdown pass against Colorado State, but in the 2.5 games where he played in relief of Ewers, 8 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions, and completed almost 68% of his passes. Can run. We saw that 67-yard touchdown run, had a good scramble against Georgia. Your thoughts as we bring in the Arch Manning era, Eric?
Chip, there gets to be a point with quarterbacks, in my experience, I don't know if you see it the same way, where, like, this is a Malik Murphy example, right? They can only develop so much in practice. I think, especially with quarterbacks, right? I think with other positions, you can kind of continue to develop in practice, and then all of a sudden, all right, you just get 1 year in on the field, and like, all right, that takes off. Only so many reps in practice, right? I think we're at that point with Arch Manning, where, yes, the potential is tantalizing. Don't look any further than Quinn Ewers, because all he's heard over the past 2 years is the potential of Arch Manning, right? The potential is tantalizing. I think we're at a point where whatever maturity he needs at the quarterback spot can only be solved with him on the field. I'm only saying that as to say there may be a growing pain here or two, Chip. And maybe Arch got some of that out this year, right? Getting the start against Mississippi State, the start against ULM. The numbers looked great. He hit the deep ball, but what was he, 15 for 31 or 16 for 31, if memory serves me correct? That first start against ULM after lighting the world on fire, coming in relief of the injured Quinn Ewers against UTSA, right? So, listen, we have seen quarterbacks, first-year starters come in, do tremendous things. And I think Arch Manning certainly, Chip, I think this is a really important year for the offense. I wrote about it. Steve Sarkisian, this is actually the fewest amount of points scored per game that Steve has had over his tenure at Texas, right? 33 in change. That's the fewest that Steve has had in his career. So I do think the offense can be primed for big things with Arch, given a lot of the electric playmaking he has. But I'm only saying what I said in terms of the growing pains, to say that, listen, there may be some growing pains, right? I don't think it's going to be severe. I don't think it's going to be 4 or 5 games, but there may be a quarter or 4 or 5 quarters during the season where it's like, man, Arch looks out of sorts. Hopefully he got some of that out with the experience that he had this year, Chip. But we are at a place in Arch Manning's career in which the next step in his development can only be on the field. So we will see what happens, Chip, but certainly a lot to solve between now and Ohio State next season, because he's going to be playing, as we've talked about, behind an offensive line that will be new, a new cast of characters with the playmakers. But I think now, if you're a Texas fan, the time is now to be excited about the Arch Manning era, Chip Brown.
Yeah. And look, Arch Manning gives you a chance up in Columbus to start next year. Look, Johnny Manziel came in. I'm not making a comparison to their playing styles, but Johnny Manziel came in and won the Heisman Trophy as a redshirt freshman. Don't forget that. Arch will be a redshirt sophomore. So I think the other cool thing about Arch Manning is that he's been, with the second unit, and that's guys like Trevor Gooseby, Neto Umazulu, Cole Hudson, and Brandon Baker. So he's got good rapport with a lot of the offensive linemen who are going to be coming in with him. Amari Nyblack, same thing. So Ryan Wingo too. So lots of upside for Arch Manning, who, let's see here, he completed 42% of his passes, 20 plus down the field, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 5 big time throws. I'll take that.
Chip, real quick, I'll just touch on this Andy's question here, just because, I want to clarify any confusion. Dia Bell will still be in high school next year, just for the record. The back will be Trey Owens.
Trey Owens.
Just want to address that, Andy, because Dia still has, plenty of time left. He'll be in high school. He'll still be in South Florida next year.
Trey Owens, who tore it up with his high school teammate Thatcher Milton in the spring game last year. I like Trey Owens. He's a boss. You watch him in the warm-ups for games. He's commanding guys. He's a big dude too.
He's
Trey Owens. They got him listed at 6'5", 236. Arch is 6'4", 220. I bet he's a little heavier than that now. He's getting those muscles. He's getting those Eric Henry guns. You know what I mean?
Something like that.
All right, Eric, let's touch on some basketball. Texas men's basketball last night. If you stayed up late like we did for this thriller between winless SEC teams, Texas and Oklahoma in Norman. What a wild game. Texas gets up by 23. Looks like they got it all going. Then Arthur Kaluma leaves the court writhing in pain. The balloon snake that was going around the Lloyd Noble Center seemed to rally the fans more than the basketball team. But then the basketball team cuts into that lead, Eric, and we got a ball game. But Jordan Pope scored 19 of his 27 in the second half. Clutch buckets, too. And Texas gets out of Norman with their first win in SEC play. Eric, your thoughts?
Listen, I am not going to poo-poo on a win because guess what? They needed a win in the worst way, right?
Especially a road win?
Especially a road win, a road quad one victory. Chip, you can tell me if I'm being too harsh. I would have felt much better given the 0-3 start in conference play and given the losses to UConn and Ohio State. I would have felt much better if they had taken care of business the way they had in the first half, ran Oklahoma out of their building. Then that gives you some confidence to say, okay, you know what? We're getting a little cohesion, right? This group that, again, has several transfers and are trying to find their offensive, kind of rhythm, defensive rhythm as well. All right, you go out, you take care of business at Oklahoma against against Oklahoma by 20 or 25 points, and you feel like, all right, maybe this is a team, Chip, in an SEC that seemingly is very, very, not seemingly, it is very, very deep, but seemingly some teams can be upended. Look no further than Tennessee's horrendous performance at Florida. And you think, all right, maybe Rodney Terry's club can go to Gainesville and shock the world. And then the second half comes. We talked about this last time. Trey Johnson in the outing against Tennessee went 7 minutes without a shot in the second half. Now, he didn't go 7 minutes without a shot, Chip, in the second half. He got a couple shots, but he went nearly 16 minutes between buckets. He had a bucket, the 17:28 mark of the second half, and then got his final bucket, which are crucial buckets, by the way, back-to-back jumpers to kind of help ice the game away. Chip, I don't know what to make of that because, as you pointed out, Jordan Pope, he's a microwave, instant offense, right? You're a Detroit guy. Wasn't there a guy from the Pistons back in the day who was called the microwave, right? Like
Vinny Johnson.
There we go, right? Like instant offense. He was taking over. He scored 13 straight points, and he's shown the capability to do that, right? It's nice to see, Jay Pope, he had 40-something against New Orleans. That's something like, all right, great performance, but it's against New Orleans. He comes back and has shown that he has a role in this offense. Chip, I think that's huge, right? Because I talked about it earlier on a radio spot, 1300 here in Austin. Jordan Pope's the starter. And I think you see a little bit of rhythm where Julian Larry comes in as that, second wave off the bench. It helps operate the offense, especially with Kendall Weaver being out. But in games, Chip, where they need offense, Jordan Pope has to be that guy that can close. I think if the game is different and maybe you need a little more defensive presence and someone to run the offense, Julian Larry can be that guy that can close. But it's still just concerning, Chip, because yes, Pope saved the day, but it's just one guy scoring. It's one guy taking the shots and be like, hey, I'm going to get you there. So I'm still taking a wait and see approach, but Chip, I would have felt much better had the Horns just really put, suffocated Oklahoma and taking care of business going into Florida on Saturday.
I keep saying, Eric, that I'm looking for connection. Like who's connecting, who's playing well off of each other, who's communicating well, who's got that chemistry. And it looks like, Jordan Pope's going to have to be on the floor. Trey Johnson's going to have to be on the floor. We know Arthur Kaluma, after his 34-point performance, can go off. I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's the Dylan Dazoo of this year's team. Kendall Weaver's hurt now, but Tremont Mark hit some key buckets. So it's looking like, we're seeing some connection, but then at other times it looks totally disjointed and turnover prone. And fortunately for Texas, Oklahoma turned it over more than Texas down the stretch. And Oklahoma they got within 2 with 15 seconds to play, but Texas hit its free throws, got out of there with the win. So the Texas women had one of the worst shooting performances you can possibly imagine against South Carolina, which they turned South Carolina over 22 times. Texas only turned it over 12. But Maddie Booker, their All-American, 3 of 19. I mean, just one of the worst shooting performances you can possibly imagine. And Texas shoots 28%. Everybody was missing. Like sometimes it's Jordan Lee stepping up when Maddie Booker's off, or, Rory Harmon hasn't shot it real well this year, but she's getting you assists and rebounds and steals. She always makes up for the lack of scoring by getting extra possessions. That's the other thing, Eric. Texas had 20 extra shots, 20 more shots than South Carolina.
Chip, 10 offensive rebounds by Kyla Oldacre in the first quarter.
I mean, Kyla Oldacre's been fantastic. Unfortunately, the refs think that when she makes a move to the bucket and people bounce off of her, that she's committing offensive fouls, when no, she's just 6'6" and probably the most powerful inside player in women's college basketball. So she's piling up fouls because the officials in women's basketball don't know how to officiate her.
You think officiating in the men's game is it leaves a lot to be desired, Chip? The women's game, yeah,
they just feel the need to be involved. God, what was that Texas Oklahoma women's game? 54 fouls called and 55 made baskets, or 55 made baskets, 54 fouls. There was no one left to play. I mean, it was just like, come on, people, what are we doing here? And my man Zay Collier on Texas Sports Unfiltered said that Shea Holly and Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets are dating. Hey now. Shea Holly's been, the glue, the defensive stopper for that team, struggling a little bit with her shot right now. But hey, Texas got to bounce back. The women are playing Their next game is against Auburn. Tonight, Auburn is in last place. That should be a no problem game for the Texas women. All right, Eric, you ready for some take it or leave it?
I am ready for some take it or leave it, Chip.
Well, then let's do it. Let's do some take it or leave it. Who's serving first?
You are serving to me, Chip. And just to quickly recap last week, 100 yards rushing for the Texas Longhorns against Ohio State Buckeyes. Chip Brown took that, said they would be right at 100. They fell short. I left it. Both of us were wrong on this one. Trey Moore, one tackle for loss, or one play behind the line of scrimmage, tackle or sack. Both of us were wrong on that. Trey had one tackle overall. And last but not least, Chip and I were both right. One Will Howard turnover. So that brings you up to speed on last week's results. And to kick us off, Chip, I'll let you have at it.
All right. Eric, Texas lands at least one wide receiver and one more defensive tackle in the transfer portal. Take it or leave it.
I'm taking it, Chip. One of the biggest questions when guys started declaring for the NFL draft that I saw on the boards was, is this a reload or rebuild for Texas football? I think it's reload. And not that I thought that Texas was going to be in a quote-unquote rebuild mode, but I understand the dichotomy, I understand the juxtaposition between both things. Chip, I don't know if I'll put it to you simply. If Steve Sarkisian doesn't take a receiver or one more DT in the portal, I think that would be indicative as far as what he believes his team ceiling is next year. So I'm taking it, Chip. What says you?
Yeah, I'll take it as well. I think Steve Sarkisian's sort of, two times can be a coincidence, 3 times is a trend. Bringing in A.D. Mitchell and then bringing in 3 veterans last year at the receiver position. Matt Golden, Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, that he will bring in one more receiver who's got some miles under him already. Might not happen until the April portal window. And then I like the way things are shaping up in defensive tackle position because you've got Travis Shaw and Cole Brevard. You can pair them as your veterans. It's a little awkward that Alex January is the voice in that room that's been in the culture. But hopefully they did a good enough job of evaluating. Steve Sarkisian calls the portal recruiting speed dating. Hopefully they figured out that these guys are culture fits because you couldn't have found better portal additions last year in Jermaine Lolay and Bill Norton, who came into a room with 2 fifth-year seniors and Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. That senior leadership, that veteran leadership is important. Texas trying to figure it out at that defensive tackle position. All right. Take it or leave it. Number 2.
Take it or leave it. Number 2, Texas men's basketball. Their go-to 5 players are Jordan Pope, Trey Johnson, Arthur Kaluma, Caden Shedrick, and Tremont Mark. Take it or leave it, Chip.
I mean, with Kendall Weaver out currently, I'd say yes. This looks like the group that you need to have on the floor at crunch time. It looked like they had a little mojo going. This team's hard to read, Eric. It's hard to predict who's going to show up, who's not. I've been disappointed with the Indiana State guys. I thought we were going to get more out of Julian Larry. And look, there's time. There's lots of time. We're just early in the SEC schedule. And Jason Kent, it looks like suddenly the game's too big for them. But I'll take this, Eric. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, really quick, when you say the Indiana State guys, I mean, obviously Kent missed a stretch with the wrist, right? And who knows how that's still affecting him. A guy who, let's call a spade a spade. All these transfer guys are trying to figure out how to play with one another. Tremont Mark was the go-to scorer for Arkansas last year. Now he's a third option, right? Jordan Pope, the go-to scorer. Now he's the kind of guy who's off ball, right? So I'll give them that out in my mind. And Arthur Kaluma has stepped up and played. Arthur Kaluma is his career averages, like he's outside of points. I mean, he is besting everything, right? He's tied his career average in points. So that is something you got to account for as well. But yeah, I'm taking it, Chip, just because, quite frankly, who else you got? I hate to be flippant, but who else you got?
I know. We don't see Jamie Vincent. I'd like to see a little more of him, but I don't know. We heard good things about Devin Pryor. Haven't, Yeah. All right. We'll move on. Take it or leave it.
Sorry, Chip. I didn't mean to throw you for a loop, but who else they got? So
right. It's and it's been, look, they needed that win. That's great. Little from here. And by the way, that's 8 straight for Texas basketball against OU. 8 straight. Like some teams just have other teams' numbers. Texas has got OU's number in men's basketball right now. All right, Eric, I'm serving this to you.
Correct.
Ohio State, who took down the Longhorns 28-14 in the Cotton Bowl, beats Notre Dame by at least 8.5 points to win the national championship Monday. Take it or leave it.
Chip, I'm leaving it because not only do I believe that Ohio State will not beat Notre Dame by 8.5 points, I think Marcus Freeman's going to find a way to upset the Buckeyes and take home their the Fighting Irish's first national championship in how long? Probably, I'm trying to remember if I was born the last time.
88.
So I was not born. There you go. Right. So, yeah, Chip, I think Marcus Freeman and company, I am choosing them to pull off the upset. All of the cards are in the Buckeyes' favor, but I think Marcus Freeman and company are going to find a way to pull off the upset, Chip.
Wow. That's impressive. I'm taking Ohio State to win and to cover in this game. I just think they're too close. They're too talented on defense. Notre Dame doesn't have enough firepower. Caleb Downs is the truth. So let's see. I do love the way Notre Dame is coached. I think they're really well coached. I mean, they manufactured ways to score to beat Georgia with a well-timed and a really stupid attempt by Georgia to move the ball with 30 seconds left in the half. Very similar to the screen pass touchdown given up by Texas in the final 30 seconds of the half. But we don't need to beat that dead horse any more than we have. But, all right. Well, good. We're head-to-head on that. That gives us a little something to check in on next week. All right, kids. Thanks, everybody.
And by the time you try to open the Twitter app or the X app on your phone, it's probably going to crash because Chip Brown has gone viral again. But nevertheless, close the show, my friend.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to Horns247 YouTube channel. That helps us grow. And feel free to leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts, because that helps us with our bosses. And until next time, we will see you over at horns247.com, where hopefully everyone can find it in their pocketbook to spend what you probably spend on 2 lattes per month to become an annual member at horns247.com, so that you get not only all of Eric and mine reporting, but the incredible recruiting reporting by Hank South, Jordan Scruggs, and then, of course, the VIP access to all the sites on the preeminent 24/7 Sports Network. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, stay safe and keep the faith.